There are a variety of file formats that you need to familiarize yourself with when working with images in Photoshop. To simplify, I'm going to divide them into three areas of the workflow: the original, source, or capture file formats, the working or master file formats, and the output file formats created for specific devices. Today, most photographs are captured as either JPEG, Apple's HEIC format, or as RAW files. JPEG and HEIC make up the majority of images captured on mobile devices, and the JPEG format is almost always an option on larger DSLR or mirrorless cameras. Both JPEG and HEIC files' popularity is based primarily on the fact that the files are really small, so you can store a large number of photos on a single mobile device or card, and because they're small, they can be written to these devices very quickly. However, the reason that these files are small is because the JPEG and HEIC formats throw away information using a process called lossy compression. Depending on the amount of compression, which we don't always have control over, the quality of the photograph can range from very high, where it's often difficult to even tell that the file's compressed, to very low, where the compression artifacts such as banding between colors or large color blocks of color start to become really noticeable. The primary issue is that the file formats that use lossy compression have significantly less flexibility when making adjustments such as changing colors and tone and contrast in Photoshop. Because of these potential problems, when given the option, many photographers prefer to capture images using a RAW file format, because RAW file formats don't throw away information using lossy compression. They still use compression, but it's a different type of lossless compression that doesn't discard information, so the quality of the image is not compromised. This gives RAW files more flexibility when making edits and enhancements to the images after capture because there's more information, there's more colors and tones to work with. Most camera manufacturers have their own proprietary RAW file formats. For example, Nikon RAW files have the .NEF file extension. Canon uses CR2 or CR3. Sony uses ARW, but they're all still considered RAW files. The DNG format, the digital negative, is another RAW file format, but it has a significant difference. It's not proprietary. Instead, Adobe chose to make it available to any software developer, enabling them to read and write DNG files. Not only do several camera manufacturers capture directly into the DNG format, it's now also available on several mobile devices. In addition, any RAW file from any camera manufacturer can be converted to the DNG file format using Lightroom Classic, Lightroom, Camera Raw, or the free Adobe DNG converter. All right, the next group of file formats we use to save what I will refer to as working or master files, and are used when saving multi-layered documents from Photoshop. They include PSD and TIFF and Adobe Cloud Documents. These are the formats that most designers start with. They don't usually start with a RAW file. If a photographer captures an image as a RAW file, they'll usually retouch it and then save it as either a TIFF file or a JPEG or a PSD, and then they'll hand that off to the designer to work with. And stock photos can usually be downloaded as only TIFF and JPEG, not RAW files. Now, both PSD and TIFF files save all of Photoshop's features, such as layers and masks and type and shape layers and paths and smart objects and more. They both use lossless compression to decrease the file size, but the quality of the image is not compromised. The biggest difference is that a TIFF file can save larger files, up to 4 gigabytes, whereas a PSD file or a Photoshop document can only save up to 2 gigabytes. Adobe's Cloud Documents are a special format designed to help transfer large files across devices, for example, between Photoshop on the desktop and Photoshop on the iPad. Now, when you save a document as a cloud document, the file is saved in Adobe's cloud instead of on your local device. And these files have special features, such as the ability to save only those portions of a file that have been edited, making it much more efficient to share these large files between these devices. They also automatically keep track of versions as you work, and they have collaborative editing options. Now, the last group of file formats are used when it comes to output and share your files to be printed or displayed on a specific device. In most instances, you will want to save a derivative or a copy of your image, resized and optimized for that device. These output file formats are often flattened, so they don't contain any layers, and they compress images, making it easier to upload or transfer files more quickly. Exporting or saving a copy allows you to return to your working file or to the master file if you ever need to make changes to it. Now, when sending images to be printed, it's best to ask what format the lab or service provider prefers. Ideally, they would request flattened TIFF or PSD files in order to maintain the highest quality possible, but often it's faster and therefore more desirable to upload or transfer and print JPEG files. So if you're sending JPEGs, be sure that the quality setting remains high, or you may see unwanted banding or artifacting in the image. When saving files to view on a screen, such as a phone or a computer, or posting online, JPEG is, again, the most common format because of its ability to create small files that download quickly. Now, before we wrap up, there are two specialty file formats that I want to make sure that I mention. The first is the PNG format. This is a popular format to save type or graphics for the web that need to display transparent areas. For example, the PNG format would be an ideal solution for displaying a round logo or type that requires transparent edge areas, because the PNG format will render smooth edges around the transparency. PNG is typically used with flat art or graphics, but not photographs. The GIF file format has the unique ability to contain an animation within the file. It's often used to create ad banners and other short animations to view on screen. GIF files are compressed using lossy compression, but in a different way than a JPEG file. To save as a GIF, you have to convert your image to a different color mode called index color, which only allows 256 colors. So again, it's not the best format to use when working with photographs, but it works very well with type and graphics. And although the GIF file format supports transparency, it only supports one level, which means that if you have a circular logo, the edges are going to look jagged when saved as a GIF. We'll be talking more in depth about GIF files later in this course when we create an animation in Photoshop. All right, that wraps up this overview of the most important file formats that you'll run across when you're working in Photoshop, and when and why you would choose one format over another.